Have questions about your pets? Looking for your next forever friend? We've got you covered. This is Pet Connection with Energy 95.3. Now, here's Eric Fox.
And we are back once again, Pet Connection right here with Energy 95.3, and of course the great gang over there at Kern County Animal Services. My name is Eric Fox, joined by the great team over there, and of course we already see puppies on the screen because you know it's going to be a good time. And of course I got my my little cohort here doing some co-hosting over here as well. If you have any questions for pets or maybe about the pet adoption process, you can put those in the chat and we'll talk about it today. But of course the fun always is when we join the gang over there and present some beautiful, beautiful animals that need a home. And today we have a dynamic duo, and that is Piper and Tiny. Good morning, guys.
Good morning, guys.
So what can you tell us? Because I was told that they're kind of become good friends in the shelter with Piper and Tiny here. What can you tell us?
They have. So Piper is the one that Nick is holding. So she's a little 5-month-old little mix. And then Tiny is this red Chihuahua. She's about a year old. So they came in at separate times from separate places. But, you know, with the shelter, some of the animals do have to be housed together. So we decided to put these two little friendly girls together, and they play all day long, and they cuddle. They were cuddling this morning when I got them out of their cage. And this one over here is crying, making sure that her little friend is okay.
Right now, they smell treats in Angela's hand, and that's what they're calling for.
Beautiful, beautiful. So that's the one thing. Before we went live on the broadcast, I was just watching them play a lot. They have a lot of that little puppy energy. They definitely are exploring and experience life. And wow, I love that. We do have the numbers right there on the screen. A1133147 and A1133207. And of course, that phone number is scrolling at the bottom. You can connect up with them, 868-7120, KernCountyAnimalServices.com. Give Piper and Tiny lots of love in your home. And I can see they got lots of love to give over there. So love that. Nick, go ahead.
Not all that uncommon. You know, as I've said before, an animal shelter is a scary place for a dog to be. And dogs can smell and hear way better than you and I can ever imagine. So when they go into an environment like ours where there's all kinds of smells and all kinds of sounds, it's scary. So we see a lot of times, like with Piper and Tiny here, that if we pair them together, they bond very quickly, and it helps them get through their time at the shelter better. It does not mean they have to be adopted or fostered together. We prefer that most of the time. But we understand that not many people can take on two dogs at once. So they do well in pairs when they're in the shelter. It's not a requirement that they leave together, but that's just how animals are able to bond so quickly. And we love seeing it.
I love that. Piper and Tiny right there. And that kind of tells us if you do already have dogs in the home, maybe a good place for them to be with another dog in the home already.
Yeah, it's probably tough to say right now. They've only been with us just for a few days. I think 2 days ago they came to us. Yes. So usually 2 days is not enough for really us to get a real good idea of what types of other animals they'll get along with. We do know same sex and similar size, they get along very well because Piper and Tiny have gotten along so well. We haven't had enough time, just 2 days, like I said, to determine if dog's bigger or smaller or cats. We're not quite sure about that. As animals stay in the shelter, we usually get to know a lot more about them in a short amount of time, believe it or not. 4 to 7 days, we can learn a lot about an animal, but within the first 48 hours, there's just so much going on. It's tough to get an accurate understanding of an animal's true personality.
Totally understood there. We did actually have a question come in from one of our listeners. Pete, thank you so much for sending your listener in or your question in. We've changed as Bakersfield does. We go from 110 out, and then 2 weeks later, we got our jackets and everything on. What with pets, especially when it starts getting cold, kind of what would you do to make sure your pet is protected when it gets cold out there?
Yeah, so first and foremost, anytime I get a question about the health and welfare of people's animals, my first response is usually, if you don't know, do what you would do for yourself or your children. Dogs are not all that different from you and I. So if it's too hot for you to be walking around on pavement barefooted, it's too hot for your dog. If it's too cold for your animal to be walking around and exercising, probably too cold for your dog. Now, that's a general rule. As we get more specific, then we start talking about what type of dog do you have? What breed of dog do you have? Is it short hair, long hair? Is it a thick coat or not? Are they squat dogs with short legs that are closer to the ground? Do they have any pre-existing conditions that could be exacerbated by the cold weather? These are all things that you need to know about your animal, and a lot of times when it's very cold outside, you may want to minimize the amount of exercise or amount of time you spend outside with your pet. A lot of people don't realize that it's of course dangerous to keep your pet locked in your car in high temperatures. Conversely, it's also equally as dangerous to keep your animal locked in your car in low temperatures as well. Your car can act like a refrigerator sometimes and lock in the cold weather. So a good rule of thumb is whatever you would do for yourself or your children, keep that in mind for your pets. Make sure that you have a relationship with a veterinarian so that you know if your animal has any pre-existing conditions that might be exacerbated by the cold weather. Know your breed. If you have an animal that's better suited for cold weather, you might be allowed to keep him or her outside for longer periods of time. If you have an animal that maybe is not meant for that, maybe has short hair, closer to the ground where their bellies might come in contact with snow or some wet areas, those are all things to keep in mind. But in general, we always preach, do what you would do for yourself and you'll keep your pet safe.
Always great advice there. Once again, if you are joining us, we have Piper and Tiny with us today who have become shelter buddies. They're doing a little nose kissing right there. A1133147 for Piper and A1133207 for Tiny. And that phone number, once again, scrolling at the bottom, 868-7120. Nick, another thing we were talking about, and we've mentioned a few times, about what happens if you happen to lose a pet. What do you do in that situation if you do find yourself handling a pet that maybe you haven't, that's run away or is missing, or what are the steps that someone should do at that time?
That's a great question, Eric. I was thinking the other day that a lot of folks in our community, they're open their hearts to a shelter animal, and they come down and they find a dog or a cat that matches their lifestyle, and it just works out. And I don't know about you, but for me, I always want to know more about the animal before it came to me. What was its life like? What kind of experiences did that animal have? We always say all the time, and sometimes I wish my dog could talk to tell me what he or she saw before she came into my life, Well, a lot of times I think it's helpful for us to explain that the animals that we get, we're not getting them from a dog farm or, a breeder or anything like that. These are pets that are coming off the street. These are animals that are found roaming, that are found homeless. Maybe they escaped from their owner, and we take thousands of them every year. And in that vein, all of the animals, we feel at some point in their lives have had somebody that has loved them, somebody that has cared for them, and somebody that might be missing them. And when you take that into consideration, it's super important to make sure that that if your animal comes up missing, there are ways that you can go to get your animal back. And one of the best ways is simply to check the animal shelters physically, virtually, however that may be. We have some systems set in place that are on our website. You can check them out to help you follow some good, safe practices on how to find your lost animal. But first and foremost is to physically go down to your animal shelters in your area and around your area and search exhaustively for your pet. Because there's just so many pets here that we know have had somebody that loves them, and we can't find a reunification.
Well, let's get them some homes. Of course, Piper and Tiny are who we have on the screen. Join us as our special furry co-host today as we do Pet Connection every single Wednesday at 10 a.m. If you ever have a question, of course, you can always send it in on our website, energy953.com. If you're watching this in the past, we'll time travel a little bit here and make sure you call that number, 868-7120. Kern County Animal Services.org is the website. Lots of great information there on how to take care of your pet and also pets available. And I always appreciate the time. These sessions always seem to go so fast. But once again, let's put them on the big screen here. That is Piper and Tiny. A1133147 for Piper, and Tiny is A1133207 8207. Just like we got Oso and Charlie a home last week, let's get Piper and Tiny a home this week. Really appreciate always the time that you guys have for us. I know you guys are busy, and we really appreciate you spend some time with us and getting a pet connection. That's what I love here. So thank you guys so much. We'll see you next Wednesday. And of course, you can join the broadcast every single Wednesday, 10 a.m. right here with Energy 95.